Each one of us is born with a legend waiting to be birthed.
Evolution's upon us.
We're about to reinvent what this world is.
Well, the last time I was in LA, I didn't get a free hug, but I did get a free high five. However, my journey turned out a little differently. I set out to accomplish what I thought was going to be my greatest mental challenge to date, running a marathon without training. Now, before you at me, I'm a good runner. I ran races before, and I'm a mind-body columnist for Sports Illustrated, Inc. magazine, and I've worked with professional athletes and coaches all at the top of their craft, and all of whom told me that running a marathon is 90% mental. And on that day, in that moment, I was on a mission to prove it. Until mile marker 19. Otherwise known to runners as the wall. Nothing in that moment would work, and I tried everything. Gatorade, Beyonce, Kanye, you name it, like nothing was getting me through this. So I did what a room full of overachievers could appreciate. I put my head down, I blocked out the outside world, and I powered through it, because that is how we achieve focus. But the more I isolated myself, the more I was weakening. In an act of desperation, I looked up, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught the attention of this sweet little boy who stood out from the crowd, and he was holding a sign and offering free high fives to runners. Unconsciously, I ran across the lane. I brushed his hand with mine. Smack. Much to my surprise, that stimulus acted like a shot in the arm to me. It was a simple act of looking up and seeing something outside of me that got me out of my head and brought me back to the present moment. My mind and body reestablished their connection, and I crossed that finish line. And I proved my theory correct. Running a marathon is 90% mental, and I could not wait to get back to New York City, author my column, and share this wisdom with the world. But drawing on energy outside of me stirred something inside me, and I became absolutely obsessed with looking up and the science behind it. Like, do you ever notice whenever we need to remember something, we do this? Or if we need to buy ourselves a little more time in a text chain to try to recall something, we'll fire off this guy. Science tells us we do this because looking up releases a chemical in the center of our brains that helps to make us more creative, more imaginative, and more open to possibilities that were unforeseen. I even started a wellness company called Upps, where the pillars of our purpose are mental wellness, positivity, and the power of interconnectedness. I was officially obsessed with the power in looking up. Then my professional and personal worlds collided. 12 weeks after I ran that LA marathon, my hand stopped working. Then my arm, and eventually my entire right side was paralyzed. My life became a revolving door of doctor and hospital visits. There was no inciting accident, no injury. I was diagnosed with a random spinal abnormality that forced emergency spinal surgery and a loss of 50% mobility, forcing me to be bedridden, sleeping upright in a hard brace at a 90-degree angle for 10 weeks. I lost my ability to ever look down again. I was forced to look up. Some of our research at Upps shows that a majority of people will spend most of the day looking down. We even coined the phrase invisible cultures to depict this societal norm. And there were two areas that we focused on. One, up. What happens when people feel seen? And two, down. What happens when they don't? And fresh out of my recovery bed, I took this information because of its significance, and I delivered a TED Talk called The Power of Looking Up, because we wanted to start a global conversation that just wasn't happening, and we did, and it was awesome. People all over the world started sharing their stories, and these cultural truths became revealed. I mean, think about it. Every morning, an interesting social paradox plays out all over the world as millions of people board commuter trains and buses. Human beings are one of the most social species on the planet, yet within close proximity of one another, sitting inches away in a train, we routinely ignore each other. Actively stopping to look up has become an accepted behavioral trait. Over half of Americans say they would donate a kidney to a perfect stranger, but only 25% will make eye contact with one. We actively seek distractions like devices in our hands, and our research shows that we do this because we have a conscious desire to disappear. 1 in 5 members of your team right now are looking down because of anxiety, depression, or other mental disorders. 1 in 5 members of your company right now feel unseen because of their differences like gender, stigma, race, religion. 1 in 5 members of your community feels a lack of inclusion. For teens, inclusion is associated with a higher GPA, and for adults, inclusion is currently the #1 reason that employees are choosing to stay in their jobs. And the Journal of Psychological Science found that a sense of inclusion can come from something as simple as eye contact from a perfect stranger. Accepting this standard of looking down is counter to the time we live in. We live in a time to be visible. On the eve of the 1-year anniversary of my surgery, my surgeon revealed to me that it didn't work. I fell into this tiny window and margin of 1% error and had to relive the greatest trauma of my life: the cutting of my skin, the fusing of my spine, the time in a hard brace, watching 77 sunsets from bed, the isolation, the confinement. I had to do it all again. And this time, as hard as the physical pain was, the mental challenge was savage. Turns out running 26.2 miles without training wasn't my greatest mental challenge to date, and neither was my first surgery. This was a soul suck. But I started writing my first book from my recovery bed, and this is what I learned. Every single one of us is healing from something, whether it's something you can see or something you can't. So my ask of you today is this: be the reason someone looks up. If you see someone looking down, say hello. Say, how are you? Pull them into the conversation, engage them in what you're doing, and help them feel seen. Right now, I'm standing in front of you and you're seeing me, and I'm only 40% healed. So today represents a lot of firsts for me since my surgery. It was my first time on a plane. This is my first time on a stage. You're my first audience. Thank you. Thank you. And this is my first time telling my full story. And I'm standing here before you tethered to a bone growth stimulator, and I'm walking across this stage with a limp, but fuck it, I'm here. But this isn't about me. It's about what this moment is doing to create a movement. So when you catch yourself looking down or in a downward train of thought, stop and look up. Because in the words of Dr. Seuss, when you stop and look around, you'll see this life is pretty amazing. Thank you.